Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen. A very special guest this week is an understatement. Somebody that doesn't need an introduction, but we're going to throw one at you anyway. Obviously, the lead writer for the World Wrestling Federation, the WWF at one time, the head writer as well for WCW, would go on to become the head writer of TNA. And now it's all about JCW. It's Juggalo Championship Wrestling. You are the man behind the pen once again, the man with the book. You are the head writer. You're also an on-air talent there as well. Welcome to the show, Mr. Vince Russo himself.
What is going on, Joe? I'm happy to be here and honored to do this interview with you.
I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to have you. Something I've actually wanted to put together for a long time now, and the opportunity came about, so really appreciate you taking the time. Let's rewind to the very beginning. Now, obviously, you've said in the past on your show that, you know, the wrestling path for you maybe wasn't something that you saw coming. You know, it wasn't something that you were aspiring for per se. But how did you first discover pro wrestling? Or I should say, when did you first discover pro wrestling as a child or young adult?
Yeah, man, it was, believe it or not, a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about. Hopefully you will, Joe. It was a UHF station.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is back in the day, growing up in New York, you literally got channels 2, 4, 7, 9, 11, and 13 was PBS. Right. That's it. So you would go to UHF and Rabbit Ears to see what other shows you could pick up. And I was going through UHF and I came across these two guys with long blonde hair that was cooler than cool, and this crazy, insane manager who spoke a mile a minute, and it was Luscious Jimmy and Handsome Johnny, the Valiant Brothers, and Captain Lou Albano. And when I saw that act, it grabbed me immediately. And I think that explains, too, why off the bat, I was drawn to the entertainment aspect. It was never the wrestling. Listen, I was a kid, maybe 10, 11 years old. I immediately knew wrestling was fake. Like I knew it wasn't real, but it was the characters and it was the promos and it was, you know, Spiros Arion shoving the headdress down the gullet of Chief Jay Strongbow. It was those things that really hooked me. And, that shaped me as to what type of a fan I was going to be when it came to wrestling.
And fast forward many years, you know, how did you get your foot in the door? If it wasn't something you were looking to do per se, you know, how did that door open up for you?
Yeah, man, I had 2 mom and pop video stores on Long Island, New York, and I loved it. I'd be doing that today. If mom and pop video stores were such a thing. I loved it. They were my stores. I was my own boss, and unfortunately, Blockbuster moved in. So I saw the writing on the wall. I was not going to be able to compete. So I started actually a wrestling radio show that I had to pay for. And what I was really doing, Joe, was I was investing in myself. And I remember, man, I had to pay $500 a week for a 2-hour show. And I was investing in myself because more than anything, I needed a job. I had kids at the time. My businesses were going under. So I thought, wrestling might be a cool option. That's it. Like, trust me, man, if I would have figured out a way to get into Major League Baseball, like that would have been my first choice. But at the time, I was doing the wrestling radio show. I had met some people in the wrestling business. So I had kind of got my foot in the door. So I thought, that might be a good place to start. And then, quite frankly, when I was running out of money to fund the show, that's when I wrote a letter to Linda McMahon.
So you enter the World Wrestling Federation, fast forward a little bit there. And once you're there, what are your first interactions like? Who are your first meetings with, whether it be phone calls or in person?
Man, it was really the person who really schooled me about the business immediately was the assistant editor of the magazine. His name was Louis Gianfrido. And Louis was a lot younger than I. Louis was very short. Louis was a bodybuilder, but Louis was old school. Louis's closest person in the company was Arnie Skolin. So that kind of tells you Louis's mindset. But Louis was really old school. Bro, this is when the business was kayfabe. And he really, really taught me the ins and outs very, very early on when I started working there. He really, really gave me an education of what the wrestling business was really all about.
Right. Well, see, at that time, it's funny you mentioned Lou Gianfrido. He did that skit on, I believe it was Monday Night Raw or Superstars, where Bob
It was
Backlund,
Raw. It was definitely Raw.
Yeah, Bob demonstrated the chicken wing. And as a wrestling fan, even though, you knew it wasn't real, like you said, and I agreed with that as well. But when that chicken wing was hooked on and that skit took place, I assured my mom that was a real segment and that was 100% real. There's nothing fake about it. And I'll never forget that. It was a great skit.
Well, you know what, Joe? That's Louis Gianfrido. Like, he knew about the cell and he had a cell for Backlund. Like, that's how he was. He was so old school, kayfabe. So, like, he's put in that spot. Think about somebody today from The Office being put in a spot like that. Like, they're going to be so nervous. Like, no, all he cared about was, I got to sell my ass off. I got to make that. That's who Louis was, man.
Yeah, no, it came off great. I mean, he sold it like a champ, and Vince McMahon sold the hell out of it. And obviously, a little bit of realism with Randy Savage running in from commentary.
Yep.
I mean, it was executed perfectly, in my opinion. And you look back at, okay, maybe it's a little skit. A lot of people may not even remember that, but it's skits like that would kind of, take you to that next level as a fan and really, get you hooked on the product, because stuff like that, it just came off unbelievable. It was
and man, I'm so happy for the memory of Louis that you remember that, because I say that all the time, Joe. I say it all the time. It's the moments. And that's one of my criticisms of wrestling today. We don't get those moments. It's those moments, like when I talk about Spiros Arion with the traditional, that traumatized me as a kid. It's those moments. Everybody can go to the moments. Andre ripping the chain off of Hulk's neck. Shawn Michaels with the barbershop. Like, everybody can go to those moments. The snake biting Savage on the arm. We had those moments, and you and I can still recall those moments. And that's one of the things that I really, really, really feel is lacking today. You don't get those moments.
Right. And a traditional fan obviously probably looks at it as, they love the wrestlers and that's about it. But for me personally, I was always into the behind the scenes people. So a Lou Gianfrido, or a Keith Elliott Greenberg, or, just hearing about these people and reading about them, and Vic Venom, So, these characters, even behind the scenes, were fascinating to me. Jack Tunney and people that, you don't see as often on television. And I remember a friend of mine actually went to a show. She was friends with, her dad was friends with security. So she went to the Providence Civic Center. She met two people, came back, told me all about the show. And she was so disappointed. She didn't get to meet anybody famous or important, she said. And I said, well, who did you meet? And, she wanted to meet Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. she met Gorilla Monsoon and Jack Tunney, and she was so
Yeah.
she was so
Yeah.
disappointed. And I'm like, oh, you got to be
Oh
kidding.
no, bro. Like when you say something like that to me, bro, I can vividly remember. Bro, a lot of times when I wrote the magazine, I had to get things approved directly to Vince. And at that time, Vince was in the studio a lot. Vince was a commentator. So I always, whatever I had to get approved, whatever I had to show him, I always had to go over to the studio and I had to sit there and wait for Vince to finish with color. And then, bro, I can remember like it was yesterday going to that studio and Gorilla was sitting there. And it's what you say, bro. It's those moments that like stay with you for. I remember, bro, one of my biggest heroes growing up was the Big Cat. And bro, I can remember the one and only time I met him. And bro, when I tell you I shook his hand, bro, his hand covered my wrist. Like that's how gigantic of a man this was. But all those moments with people like that, I mean, God, bro, those are the moments I'll never, ever forget.
Right. And those are, there are moments that you could easily take for granted because you're with them backstage every day. But now looking back at it, like you said, it's something you'll never forget. And it's special to work with people like that in the industry, and fast forward a little bit, you start working with celebrities. When you're working with different celebrities, obviously in wrestling, WrestleMania is very heavy with the celebrities, but you see them on other shows and different events. What would you say was the best celebrity experience for you personally and the worst experience on the other side of it?
Well, bro, it's funny because you had two kinds of celebrities. You had the celebrity that was totally into it, and you had the people that just did not want to be there. And I can remember, bro, my very first WrestleMania working there was WrestleMania 10. And we had two celebrities that were the complete opposite. Jenny Garth from 90210, which was red hot at the time, did not want to be anywhere near the place. I mean, literally stayed in a garden dressing room and only went to and from the spot she had to go to. Meanwhile, paling in comparison, her celebrity status to freaking Burt Reynolds. Give me a break. Right. Burt Reynolds this guy was all over the place, was so excited to be there, was so excited to meet the wrestlers. And it was always the guys like that, like Chuck Norris. It was like the real men's men that really respected the wrestlers and what they did. And, the thing I always enjoyed was, working with Double J and like trying to talk people into taking like the figure four. I can remember convincing Ben Stiller to take he literally believed that his legs were going to be broken. I can even remember like somebody very popular back in the day when the internet was just beginning to be a thing, Cindy Margolis. Cindy Margolis was a huge name. Right. And I could remember, I always used to have to talk people into the figure four because they thought it was real. Sure. One of my favorite things of all time, though, bro, is obviously at that time, not today. I was such a huge Howard Stern mark, and Stern was so hot, on fire. So slowly but surely, man, I was bringing the whack pack, onto the show. That's right. And we were at WCW and we got Beetlejuice. And obviously, Jeff's got to hit Beetlejuice with the guitar. But the funny thing was, it was live, Jeff was so afraid that Beetlejuice wasn't going to understand. He had to sell the guitar. That's because, Jeff's a pro. Double J's a pro. And he's like, that's all he's thinking of. If he doesn't sell this, I'm dead. And sure enough, man, we did the guitar shot and Beetlejuice sold it like $1 million, like he was dead. So, talking the celebrities into doing stuff like that was really, really a lot of fun.
And starting with the World Wrestling Federation, with the magazine as Vic Venom, how did that come about? The name, and
Yeah.
just the character in the magazine.
Bro, I'll be honest with you. Aside from a couple of stories that Louis would write, and like you mentioned, the legendary, and he is a legend in every sense of the word, Keith Elliott Greenberg, he would write maybe one story a month. Aside from that, bro, I wrote that entire magazine. So I could not have everything be by Vince Russo, by Vince Russo. I did not want that. So that forced me to come up with Vic Venom, the Informer, other characters in the magazine, because I just did not want to put my name all over the magazine. So that's why I did it.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the magazine, obviously you're a big part of that history of the magazine. What is your take on the way the world has evolved, with social media? It wasn't around back then. Now it's huge. It's everybody's source of, news, and we look for it every day, but we don't have those magazines at the stand anymore. And I feel like for wrestling fans, they're missing out because, you're shopping with your parents at the supermarket, and I would beg my mom, can I go to that section and just kind of check out, and I'll be there for a half hour just reading all of the magazines and, buying a few of them. And that was special for me as a fan. And that's how I would also come to find out about territories and different things going on that I couldn't see, in the Providence area. So for me, it was very special. And obviously times have changed. But what's your take on that? Do you think that that's something that could be brought back eventually, or are we just too far past that?
Joe, if you were to ask me honestly, would I trade in the World Wide Web today for newspapers and magazines? Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, Joe, I can remember as a kid, the Newsday. I could not wait to look at box scores. Looking at box scores as a kid, I grew up a Giant fan. I miss that so much, man. I listen, a lot of people, I always get labeled, you're old, you're bitter. Seth Rollins just called me a hanger-oner. Bro, it's not that. I've experienced what we have now, and I experienced what we had back then. And quite frankly, I enjoyed what we had back then a lot better. Like you said, Joe, even when I talk about, the minimal number of television shows we would get, it made you appreciate it. It really made you, when you had to seek out a good show, it made you appreciate. Now I can't understand where, I've got my Roku and I've got 1 billion channels on. I can't find one thing to watch. So it's not that I would trade this in. I would trade this in for a telephone with the Wiley cord any day of the week. Any day of the week. That's just my experience. There are so many things I enjoyed more back then. Wrestling, for sure. Music, for sure. Collecting albums, there are so many things I enjoyed. And listen, I got a taste of both. And I prefer to live in that world.
Right. And so you enter the World Wrestling Federation basically in the dead center of the new generation. So you have all these new superstars that are coming in with, the Mantars and the Kamas and the Hunter Hearst Helmsleys. And, some of them are doing pretty good. Some of them are not. Obviously, the Goon and TL Hopper, these guys are people who have paved the way in territories and whatnot. But when it comes to maybe, portraying those roles, they didn't always, connect with the fans. But for me personally, as a small fan at that time, I was into it. And I always enjoyed all of the oddball characters. It didn't bother me. I know it gets a lot of heat. A lot of people don't like it. But, I would watch Superstars and, if the Goon's in action, Salvatore Sincere is next, I'm just as happy as if there's a Bret Hart in action. I was just into it and I loved it. I wanted to consume all of it, But what was your take on entering the WWF? Obviously, you were already a fan previously where you knew all the legends that you mentioned earlier in the program, but now you're seeing a lot of these kind of mid-Carter guys kind of fill in the roster.
I got to tell you, Joe, I hated it. And it was so hard for me working for a company that I loved and a company I grew up on and absolutely hating the product. It was really hard for me. Like, Joe, my breaking point was this, and this was an absolute shoot. They had all the characters that you're talking about, Mantar. I'll never forget. I was there for the debut of Mantar. I was there. Bro, he had a paper mache head it had to be 5 feet. And I'm watching his entrance and I'm saying to myself, I'm in the arena and I'm like, bro, there's no way he's getting that head in the ring. Like, did anybody figure this out? Right. And this is his debut. And I'm like, and bro, sure enough, he couldn't get the head in the ring. But Joe, the breaking point for me was my office was on the second floor of WWE headquarters. The office next to me, every time creative would come up with an idea, and bro, creative at that point is literally Vince, Patterson, and Pritchard, okay? Every time they would come up with an idea for a character, they would bring the idea over to creative services. And there was a woman that would draw out what this character would look like. So I was in the office next to her, bro, and whenever she would leave her office, I would go in there and I would see what she had on her desk. So I would know what's coming next. And bro, I will never forget this. This is where they lost me. She had renderings of a character named What? What was going to be whose tag team partner? And I saw that and I'm like, guys, like, seriously? And then what really just was like game over was you now mirror that against the NWO. I'll never forget, Joe. I was at Bruce Pritchard's house when Hogan came out as the third man. And I sat there and watched it with Pritchard, and I did not dare say this to him, but I said it to myself, we're dead. We are absolutely dead. The direction they were going in and the direction we were going in, I knew we were dead.
And that was your immediate feeling. What was the feedback backstage, just kind of coming off of that pay-per-view?
Bro, it's a funny thing with wrestlers now. And bro, I really don't know how it is today. I haven't been in a WWE locker room in 26 years. I've never been in an AEW locker room. But bro, a lot of times when I was working, Joe, to the wrestlers, it was about business. And all they cared about was getting paid. As long as they were getting paid and as long as they were making money, that's all they really cared about. I don't think they registered right away how this could possibly lose them money if the popularity, because you got to remember back then they're getting a percentage of house shows and merch and all that stuff. And when the NWO started taking off, that was more and more money out of their pocket. So there wasn't really like Hogan came out and holy shit. But I think over time, they started realizing we're not making as much as we once did.
Right. That makes sense. So what would you say was if you had to look back in your time with World Wrestling Federation specifically, your most difficult program to write? Storyline or whatever it may be. Was there anything that stands out?
Yeah, Joe, I get this all the time because people don't have a clue. I get all the time, oh yeah, Vince was so successful because look at the roster he had. Okay, first of all, when I took over the roster, Steve Austin was the ringmaster and The Rock was Rocky Maivia, first of all. Joe, here's the problem and here's the challenge as a writer, and this is why today you see many things fail. When you've got a great talent, when you've got an Austin, when you've got a Taker, when you've got a Mick, when you got a Rock, when you've got great talent, bro, you have to write up to their level. You can't give them shit. I didn't dare hand Steve Austin shit because Austin would have called me on it. And what the problem is, Joe, is you've got such great talent and you got to keep bringing them to the next level. You can't bring them down. You got to, how's Austin going to top this? And how's Rock going to top this? And you got to keep bringing them to the level. I always bring up, bro, the one guy I would have given anything in my life to work with was Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt was a genius. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. They could not ride up to Bray Wyatt. They could not keep bringing Bray Wyatt to the next level. So what did they wind up doing eventually? Bringing him down. When you start doing that to a character, bro, they're dead in the water. And I think Bray is the perfect example. So the hardest part, bro, is really when you have talented talent, and you've got to keep bringing them to that next level. You know, it's like an artist who's got a hit album, and now we got to top that with the next one and the one after that. That is very, very, very difficult to do.
And on the flip side of that, is there ever an occasion where you maybe wrote something for somebody that, you know, you thought it was going to go to a certain place, but it just blew away expectations and actually went way further than you anticipated?
Oh yeah, I mean that happens all the time. But one that comes to mind, bro, and it was like a much, you could say a much smaller level, was I remember like at TNA, and I remember, you know, developing the Beautiful People, and then we brought in Madison Rayne as she was like going to be the servant who they were going to tell what to do. But you know, working with Madison, she was great. She was great in the role. So when I'm writing and I assign a role, there are no expectations. It really is going to be up to you for me to notice you. You know, bro, another perfect example. I can remember the days when Brian James was doing nothing, zero. And I would show up at TV every week and he would say, Vince, you got to find me something. You got to find me something. You got to find me something. So then they started with the roadie. And I saw the roadie and I'm like, this freaking guy is hysterical. So then he evolves to the road dog. So it's really up to you and what you're going to do with that opportunity that's given to you.
So one of the characters from the early 90s, around 1992, Papa Shango. Obviously, he would go on to become Godfather and other characters. Papa Shango was kind of not rumored, but I guess planned to be brought back at some point in the Attitude Era, because there were even promo shots of Papa Shango from around 1997 or so. But it never panned out. Papa Shango never came back as that gimmick. Any insight on that? Any memories of that occasion?
God, bro, I don't have memories of that at all. I mean, at all. I will tell you a couple of things, though, about that. Number one, I was a huge fan of Papa Shango. I thought that was a great character with the green gimmick, with the warrior and all that stuff. Yeah. I thought that was a great character. So I would have welcomed that character with open arms. I will also tell you this, though, too, Joe. A lot of people think it was me. Bro, the Godfather and the Ho Train was not my idea. I did not pitch that idea. I did not come up with that. I know Taker was really tight with Charles Wright. They were best friends. And I'm sure somewhere in there, the Godfather was born because, you know, Charles was really a bouncer in Vegas. Like that was a shoot. So I'm sure somehow it came out of that. But yeah, man, I would have definitely been 100% open to bringing Papa Shango back, but I don't remember that at all.
One of the live shows that you would often do was WWF Live Wire, and that was 1996 to, I think, 1998 or 97. So Live Wire was a show in its earliest stages where fans could actually call in, as you know. So fans could call in and, you know, it was live, legit. So any memories of that, you know, in the early stages of Live Wire? And did you ever get any phone calls? I mean, I heard some on TV that were just a little outlandish, and obviously, you know, they'd be hung up on. But Any memories of that program specifically?
Bro, there are some great memories of that program, and I think you'll appreciate this, Joe. So, Joe, I'm the magazine guy, and you have nobody really can understand what it's like working with a Vince McMahon, because, like, Joe, it's a Friday, and I've got a 12 o'clock meeting with Vince McMahon to go over the magazine. Okay, so here's how it works. You're getting a phone call from his assistant, Beth, at about 12 o'clock. Vince is behind schedule. He'll see you at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock becomes 2. 2 o'clock becomes 3. 3 o'clock becomes 4. So now it's 6 o'clock on a Friday night. And Beth, Vince will see you now. Great. Meanwhile, I got a family, kids, the weekend, the whole 9 yards. Right. It doesn't matter, Joe. So, Joe, I'll never forget. I go up there to show him the magazine, and Live Wire had just started. And I remember I sat there, and I don't know why, and it was kind of oh, by the way, that Live Wire show sucks. And I'll never forget, bro, without missing a beat, he looked at me and said, "What? You think you could do better?" What am I going to say? I said, yes. I don't know. What am I going to say? No, the show sucks, Vince. And no, now, Joe, you have to understand, bro, I had no intention on being on TV. I'm the magazine guy. I'm not, that's not a thought in my mind. So when he says, do you think you could do better? The New Yorker in me has to say yes. So he says, no problem. Be in the studio at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. I swear to God. So wow. Vic Venom shows up at 8 o'clock in the morning. No rehearsal, no going over anything. It's a live camera. Go. I'll never forget, Joe, one of my greatest memories is this is around Royal Rumble time. Now, Joe, everything the WWE did back there was so freaking predictable. Everything they did was so predictable. So I'm in a separate room, sitting in a chair. They come to me for my Royal Rumble predictions. Okay? Bro, it was as obvious as day that Bret Hart was winning the Royal Rumble. It was as clear as day. So my prediction is Bret Hart. Bro, we go to commercial. He comes fuming into the room. Why would you give away the finish of the Royal Rumble? Why would you? And I'm like, Vince, nobody told me the finish of the Royal Rumble. It's obvious as day. Bret's going over. Nobody's smarting me up. I don't know who's going to win. Bro, he changed the finish because of that.
Wow.
But that's everything was so freaking predictable, bro. Nobody clued me in. So it was like things like that, bro, I swear to God, I look back at my WWE run. I can name to you, Joe, probably 6 solid times he should have fired me for things that I said and not telling him what he wanted to hear. But at the end of the day, man, like he needed somebody like that because there were so many times, bro, when you talk about the magazine articles, I started the Raw magazine. And one of the first things I did was an in-depth interview with Bret Hart. And we talked about him going to WCW and Eric Bischoff. That was unheard of back then. So again, I got to get everything, approved through Vince. Well, just so everybody gets a taste for who Bruce Pritchard is, Bruce could not wait to show Vince this story, knowing Vince was going to blow a gasket. So I go up there, bro. He's got the Bret Hart interview on his desk. Bro, he takes one arm and clears the entire table. What are you trying to do to me? Put me out of business? Bro, it was times like that, Joe, and I'm just being honest with you, where like anybody else would have shit their pants.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing inside because I know this is the evolution of wrestling. And I said to him, I said, put you out of business. I'm like, I'm trying to help you. Do you know you know how many people are going to want to read this interview? You know how many magazines this is going to sell? But like, I would just tell them things that like nobody else would dare tell them. But Joe, my philosophy has always been this to this day. I work for Violent J now. Here's my responsibility. If your name is on my paycheck, it is my responsibility to be honest with you. You're paying me. I'm going to tell you what I really think. I mean, I just feel that obligation. I used to get heat with Dixie Carter all the time for that because I was the guy that told her what she didn't want to hear. Well, if you're signing my paycheck, I think I owe that to you. And that's why I've always been that way.
And do you have any insight on how many magazines actually were selling at that time or in their hottest?
Oh God, I don't remember a number, Joe, but I remember those swimsuit editions with Sable and Sunny. Oh my God, we sold a shitload of those. I mean, the Raw magazine did really, really well because the WWF magazine was just corny. Joe, do you know when I started writing for the magazine, every single story in that magazine was made up? And I walk in there and I'm like, let me get this straight. You have access to the talent and you're making shit up for them? Like that made no sense to me. So I started going on the road for the magazine and interviewing talent. That had never been done before I got there.
Right.
And it blew my mind.
Now, interactions with Jack Tunney over the years, you may not have had many, but any memories of Jack?
No, that was before my time, Joe. Or maybe he was still there at the very, very tail end, but I never met the man, not one time.
And you mentioned being in the studio with Gorilla Monsoon. Any personal memories with Gorilla over the years?
No, bro, you know what it is? When you're around people like that, bro, here's the difference between now and then. Like, I swear to God, I can remember instances of being in cars with people and just sitting on there everywhere. Bro, I drove in a car with Arn Anderson one time. And he gave me 30 years of wisdom. I never said a word. And, being around people like, Dutch Mantel. And like I said, bro, sitting across, I'll never forget, bro. I was at a convention once, right? And everybody was eating. Freaking Jim Myers is sitting there by himself. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I sat right across from him and I got the Shea Stadium stories and all this shit. So to me, bro, that was like just iconic, the Freddie Blassies. Like today, you have somebody like me trying to tell these kids something. You don't know what you're talking about. You're irrelevant, blah, 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 blah. There's just such a total respect. When I was ever in the vicinity of a legend, I would just sit there, keep my mouth shut, and listen. Bob Backlund, listen to every word they said.
What was the best piece of advice, if you had to choose one, that was given to you while you were there with the company?
No doubt about it, bro. It was Louis Gianfrido my first week on the job. And I'll tell you what, Joe, back then, you had an office and your office had 4 walls. You were allowed to pick what wrestlers you wanted on the walls. So creative services would get the poster, put them on a frame, and put them on your wall in your office. Okay. Louis Gianfrido had nothing on his walls. So this is like my second or third day on the job. And I'm like, Louis, why is this office so bare? Why do you have nothing on the wall? And Louis turned around to me and he said, because every day in wrestling can be your last day. And when my last day comes, I just want to put my shit in a box and walk out. Bro, that rang so true. And I never forgot that one single day. Every day in that business can be your last day.
Yeah. Did Louis do anything wrestling related after his departure?
No, he was a bodybuilder, bro, and he was a natural bodybuilder. Like, that was one of the things, like, he always being tested and diet and working out and stuff. He took that stuff real seriously. He competed in, tournaments and, stuff like that, but he was a bodybuilder. He was an actual bodybuilder.
Wow. Okay. So one of the biggest storylines for a while there, one of the biggest episodes, I should say, D-Generation X on the tank. Obviously, everybody's talked about it a million times. But in your personal opinion, I've heard from other people, would they have gone in if that door opened, or are they just saying that, for?
I think they would have. I think they would have, because, bro, that was just the temperature back then. People don't understand that. Like, bro, I get, and listen, I am sorry for this. I've apologized for this. I've been forgiven for this decades ago. That was the Oklahoma character. Bro, it was shots fired. No matter, from both sides, no matter what we have to do, Bischoff giving away the finish to McFoley winning the championship, me going over there and us doing Oklahoma. That was never, bro, bro, to this day, one of the men, I don't even want to say one of, the person I probably respect more than anybody I ever worked with was Jim Ross. Because in Jim Ross's position, as high as that was not a politician, did not play politics, never lied to me, never shot straight with me. So when we went over there and did Oklahoma, I'm not even thinking about this affecting Jim personally. It was shots were being fired on both sides, and whatever we could do, that was the temperature at the time. So I believe without a shadow of a doubt, if that door did not come down, I think they would have drove that thing directly in. And here's where Bischoff made a mistake, in my opinion. Bro, if they drive in, you have the rights to that footage. He closed the door. You had the rights to their footage. We're coming into your television show. You're live. You had the rights to that. And listen, I don't like Eric. Eric doesn't like me. I will never like Eric, but I will say this. That's a tough call to make at the time. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's a very tough call, because if I let these guys in, like, what's going to happen? You got to start thinking legally. You got to start thinking that way. So I totally understand it, but there's no question in my mind that they wouldn't have driven that thing in there.
Yeah. It's one of those things that just, what if? And it'll be talked about, and still is being talked about, obviously, today.
Yeah.
But, when it comes to the 1994 Royal Rumble, this was before your time there, obviously. Brett and Luger both going over. We'd see that one more time years later. I think it was Rock and somebody or something like that. But for Royal Rumble specifically, what was your game plan going into a Royal Rumble? Because you got so much going on, and Royal Rumble was always one of my personal favorite matches. How did you make everybody look and feel important? Because in most cases, everybody did.
Yeah. I'll be honest, Joe, I didn't. As a writer, like, all I care about is the finish. Like, this is the finish we need. That was Pat Patterson. I mean, from A through Z, that was Patterson. Patterson was a master. You talk about, meeting these icons. I can't tell you, Joe, how many times Pat and Brett would be sitting on a golf cart that was in the back, took people around the building, going over Brett's match. And from afar, I would just watch and listen. They didn't even know I was there. And watching Pat go over a match with a Bret Hart, bro, you talk about a lost art. Like, my God, like that does not happen today on any level. So those Royal Rumbles, bro, that was his artistry A through Z.
And you were there as far as ribbing goes. You were there for some of the big ones, like Mr. Perfect. You know, he was employed while you were there as a commentator in '96. Obviously, Mr. Fuji, Owen Hart, British Bulldog. They were all there during your time. Did you ever witness any crazy ribs, or were you ever personally ribbed?
Yeah, I wasn't, bro, because that was more, bro, in wrestling, it's the boys in the office. I don't know how it is today. I have no idea how it is today. Back then, it was the boys and the office. The boys would not rib the office because you don't know what's going to happen. The boys always rib the boys. And a lot of that stuff happened out on the road. So I was always, away from that. One thing that I do remember that wasn't really a rib, but it was such a comical thing. Owen Hart, it was around the time of the Montreal Screwjob. And Owen Hart was written out of the show for a while, but he was coming back. We were planning on him coming back. And I'll never forget, man, it was a pay-per-view. We hadn't seen Owen for a while. The wrestlers fight to the back. They kick open a door, and Owen Hart is standing right there, who hadn't been on television for months. And we're live. And I remember Owen looking directly in the camera and saying, "I'm not here," and leaving. It's funny, man, because it's those are the kind of things like you just never forget. Like, I can't tell you who won what matches at what buildings and like stuff like that. But moments like that, bro, that are just so wrestling, you just never forget, And
we've heard so many great stories about Owen over the years, and just such a loving individual, a friendly individual. What are some of the personal memories you have of just being around Owen?
Joe, I say this all the time, honestly. One thing I hated about the wrestling business is male, female. There was such a level of adultery. It was disgusting to me because I was married at the time and I had small kids. And here I am, working, and my wife is home raising 3 kids by herself. And I'm going to cheat on her while I'm on the road. Like, to me, that was the most disgusting form of disrespect. Like, so I might as well have went home and spit in my wife's face. Well, this went on everywhere. And I can honestly tell you, Owen Hart was the only guy that I knew without a shadow of a doubt was faithful to his wife, Martha. That tells you everything you need to know, because it was everywhere. The guys, the gals, everywhere. Owen Hart was the only guy that I knew was faithful to his wife. And I'll always remember him for that.
Yeah, Owen Hart, one of the true greats, without a doubt. When it comes to the book, though, you took the book over for Stone Cold, like you said, right when he was the ringmaster. So when he dropped that John 3:16, Austin 3:16 promo at the King of the Ring 1996, was that scripted? Did that come organically?
No, I'll tell you 2 great stories about that. I wish I could say I came up with Austin 3:16, even though I wouldn't get a penny in royalties. It would be great to claim. We were at King of the Ring. Steve came up to me. They always did. Steve always did. Rock always did, because they're always thinking about their characters and always nonstop. So Steve was, "I want to run this by you." And he ran the promo by me. And I said, "Steve, that's it." So I watch him deliver it that night. And I know Austin 3:16 is going to be huge. I know it's going to be huge, right? So, bro, I run back. I'm still doing a lot of people don't know, when I was writing TV, I was still doing the magazine. A lot of people don't understand that. bro, I went back. I can't wait to do the cover of the magazine. So I get a grainy black and white close-up photo of Austin, and he's bleeding and the blood is in red. And the headline is Austin 316. Bro, this is, if Royal Rumble was Sunday, this possibly could be Monday. It was definitely that week. So, bro, what do I got to do? I got to go to the TV studio. I got to show Vince the cover of the magazine. So, bro, Vince always had a way of, it was always the glasses at the end of the nose. It was always this when he's looking at something. So, bro, he looks at this cover, Austin 316. He looks up at me and says, what does this mean? I said, Vince, he cut that in his King of the Ring promo. This is going to be huge. And Vince said to me, I don't get it. I don't understand it. Change it. And I literally had to go back. I think the cover wound up being Stone Cold King or something. Vince.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. But that was 1,000% Steve. He came up with that. He kept saying it. Marketing, branding, 1,000% him.
No, I'm sure it would have been inevitable anyway because of how big of a star Stone Cold was and, what he had in him. But with that said, if he hadn't come up with that line, hypothetically, do you think that it would have gone to the height that it did?
I think so, man.
Yeah.
I think so because that was, man, that was the simplest story probably in the history of wrestling that every single person can relate to. It was blue collar versus white collar. He was saying everything to his boss that every single person watching the show wanted to say to their boss. And that's why it was so successful. So simple, but it just spoke volumes for everybody, every blue collar worker out there.
I've got two venue questions for you. So when it comes to venues, right before you joined the World Wrestling Federation, 1994 SummerSlam, Chicago United Center was brand new, beautiful facility. Capacity was pretty large. You could hold, I think, 18, 19, 20,000 people there. It was completely sold out. Fast forward, WWF would never return to the Chicago United Center. And being such a beautiful arena, do you have any insight on that and why that happened? They just returned either this year or last year for the first time.
God, I don't. I don't have any idea. I didn't even realize that till you just laid it out to me. I have no idea.
Yeah, I always wondered about that. Just such a beautiful arena, and WCW would immediately kind of take over after WWF.
Yeah. It's funny because I can remember the Rosemont, so I guess that's where they went instead. I guess.
Right.
Yeah. But no, I didn't even realize that story, to be honest with you.
Yeah, WrestleMania 13 was at the Rosemont, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So another venue question. When it comes to venues, you're traveling from town to town. Did you have a favorite, an arena that you look forward to going to? Maybe the crowd was hot or whatever.
Yeah, honestly, man, just the Nassau Coliseum. Because that was my stomping grounds, man. I used to go see the old ABA Nets. I was a big ABA Net fan at the Nassau Coliseum. So a lot of great concerts when I was a kid growing up. So going to Nassau was always special.
So when WCW was kind of knocking down WWF for a while there, all those weeks in a row, what was Vince's feedback behind the scenes with you, just in conversations, once it started gaining traction for a while there?
God, bro, you know what? I was really disappointed, and I'll tell you why. Because, Vince's favorite word was bravado. And when you think of Vince McMahon back then, you think of bravado. Who's more confident than that? Who's more arrogant than that? Whose shoulders are wider than that? That's what you think of. What really, I don't know if it's disappointed. What really made me look at him in a different light was during that time, he now played the victim card. And I remember, man, at the time when WCW was kicking our ass, He held a company-wide meeting, and I think Piper had just signed with him. And in front of the entire company, he said, well, they got Roddy Piper. There's nobody else. And it was the Millionaire Ted skits. It was Vince McMahon against Millionaire Ted. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, bro, these people may not know the history of the territories. Do you know how many freaking people you put out of business? And now you're going to, bro, honestly, I thought it was pathetic. I really thought it was pathetic. And it really made me look at Vince in a different light, that all of a sudden, poor, pitiful me, a millionaire is buying all of our talent and I can't compete. Yeah, bro. What about the territories that couldn't compete with you and you were taking their time? That's all I could think about, man. But yeah, man, he played the role of victim, and it was really sad, man. Don't play the freaking role of victim. Roll up your sleeves and freaking let's get to work.
Right. Exactly. And what was the turning point, you believe? Do you think? Obviously, they said don't turn the channel. Foley's winning the title, and ultimately everybody turned the channel. But it must have been something beyond that. What else do you think they?
Bro, I'll tell you what I think it was. And again, Vince Russo, who has the reputation of taking credit for everything. Again, not my idea. I have no problem saying these things. Bro, I really think the turn was, and this was all Vince, just like Austin was 316, this was all Vince. Vince bringing Tyson in. I felt that was the beginning, because people don't remember Tyson back in the day was he was Paul Bunyan. There was nobody like him. He had just been banned from pay-per-views for biting the ear of Evander Holyfield. And Vince's idea was, he may be barred from boxing. He's not barred from wrestling. Let's get him on pay-per-view. And part of the deal was, a lot of people don't realize this, part of the deal was Mike wanted to do it because he wanted Vince to help his perception. Because at that time, he was a heel. And he wanted Vince to help the perception of him being a good guy and just to help his perception. And that's why, bro, when I first sat down and we were talking about the creative, they had Tyson being a babyface. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, you guys are freaking missing this, man. And I came up with the whole DX thing when he reveals DX. I said, bro, let him be with DX. You got him and Austin face to face. Are you freaking kidding me? Then if you want to help him with his image to be a babyface, you do that after WrestleMania. He can help Austin. You could do it right there. But how in that buildup do you not have Austin and Tyson face to face? And I really had to talk Vince into that, because like I said, part of the arrangement was, we're going to help you, with your perception of Holyfield. We're going to help make you look like a good guy in a baby face. But I was like, guys, you cannot not have Austin and Tyson face to face. Tell that story on the end, and thank God they did. But I really think bringing in Tyson was the beginning of the Attitude Era.
And was there ever a celebrity that you were maybe so close to bringing in, it looked like it was a go, and then unfortunately slipped through, and you're disappointed that it didn't come off?
Bro, there were a lot of times when it related to pop culture where Vince just did not have a clue. I remember MTV at the time, okay, there was a show called The Tom Green Show. Now, people have to understand, Tom Green came before everybody. Everybody. Jackass followed Tom Green. Tom Green was the first guy that was doing all these crazy things. We had an association with MTV. That's what GTV was supposed to be, Tom Green. It was supposed to be Tom Green with the camera doing all that shit, because I wanted to piggyback on that show being so hot at the time. It was a phenomenon. Of course, Vince had no idea who Tom Green was. So we had to scrap that idea. One of my favorite ones, though, Joe, I love telling this story, is Sable was suing the company. Right. At the same time, the Blair Witch Project was coming out. Okay. Now, bro, if you remember, this is the beginning of the internet, and they were putting out things about the Blair Witch Project. Bro, people didn't know if it was a shoot or a work. People thought it was real. The marketing campaign was brilliant. So the movie's about to come out. Sable suing the WWE. So me and Ed Ferrara, we get Stevie Richards and the Blue Meanie, and we bring them deep in the woods in Connecticut somewhere. Bro, we got the camera up Meanie's nose with the snots coming out the whole 9 years. We shoot the Blonde Bitch Project. Bro, maybe the best thing I ever shot. Freaking hysterical, right? So, bro, every time we do something like that, we got to bring it to Vince, okay? Brought it to Vince, glasses down at the end of the nose. What am I watching here? Vince, there's this movie coming out this weekend, Blair Witch Project. It's going to be red hot. Everybody's going to be talking about it. We're piggybacking off of that. Nobody's going to go see that movie. We're not airing these. Bro, my best one was the Val Venus vignettes when we got Jenna Jameson. Bro, literally, we're at Bruce Pritchard's house. He's got a whirlpool tub gimmick. Bro, Jenna Jameson is in the hot tub, stark naked with Val Venus as a shoot. Bring the footage to Vince. Bro, he killed about 75% of those vignettes because he said Jenna Jameson was ugly. And he cut things like that, bro. I used to like, you couldn't argue with him, bro, because Vince was wrestling 24/7. He didn't know what was hot on television. He didn't know who Jenna Jameson. He had no idea that we were scoring things that were pretty big. And you couldn't sit there and explain it to him because he just didn't know. And I remember when Joe Walsh came out with Rocky Mountain Way. That song was everywhere. Bro, he wanted to play it free at WrestleMania. And Vince said no because he didn't know who Joe Walsh was.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it was stuff like that where you used to be like, bro, you just got to get out more. Like, you got to know what's going on in the world, you know?
That's the thing. If he doesn't know what it is, then it doesn't exist, I guess, right?
Exactly, man. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Vince, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been a pleasure to have you here, and I encourage the fans to check out RussoBrand.com, support you, of course, and, of course, the Coach and Bro Show on YouTube, which I'm a loyal viewer of myself, and we thank you again for being here.
I appreciate it, and I just want to plug, guys, because I just heard for so many years how wrestling had changed, and people are fans of the Attitude Era, and they don't watch anymore. I just want to tell you guys, check out JCW Lunacy. We have a new show every Thursday night, 7:00 on YouTube. And guys, it's just a throwback. There are characters, there are storylines. If you miss that kind of wrestling show, just check that show out.
Awesome. And I look forward to taking a deep dive into JCW with you when we do the part 2 eventually. Looking forward to that chat. And thank you again for being here. For Vince Russo, I'm Joseph Bruen. This has been the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments. We'd love to hear from you, the fans, what you thought of the interview and what we got coming up in the future. Thank you so much.